It is time yet again for me to feel like a grandma in this fandom. Especially since in a month or two I will celebrate my 5 years as a BL fan. What the actual hell? So for as long as I've been alive, I've noticed that my taste has evolved as I've grown older. And something that I find particularly fascinating about fandoms is that they evolve with us. So sadly, while filming, I didn't realize that I actually brought my lamp into the shot. So you will have to do with it for the rest of the video. I'm really sorry about that. I'm a dumb bitch. BL, which started as a genre for cute men-loving men rom-coms very much detached from queer representation, has now actual coming out scenes and relevant queer topics. And it contains many types of stories. While university BL shows still dominate the market, we now have shows like Not Me, I Told Sunset About You, and 1,000 Stars, which are very much different from that. But anyways, BL is a very young genre. It doesn't even have 10 years old if we take Lovesick in 2014 as the very first BL series. But there are shows that I've watched that I still love just as much. That time can't make seem worse in my eyes. And others that do very much look and feel dated. So today I want to go through shows that were released before 2019 and see if they still hold up today or not. But more importantly, with the same success as they once did. Let's go. So as I said, Lovesick was the first IBL released in 2014, with its second season in 2015. Lovesick is pretty special to me because it's one of my favorite BL shows of all time, despite being globally incredibly flawed. So those Lovesick still hold up today? And my answer is yes and no. No, because the camera quality, budget, even acting, let's be honest, and tropes feel very much early BL, with the addition of many straight storylines that weren't in the original novel, as well as the universally hated I don't like guys but I like him trope. In that sense, I don't think Lovesick would be as important or successful today as it was being the first IBL ever. I honestly think it would be extremely forgettable today. But I gotta say that the reason Lovesick is still a favorite of mine years after its release is because of the characterization of Poon and No, who are still to this day extremely compelling characters and one of the healthiest BL ships out there, and the slice of life elements that are still some of the best in Thai drama's history because of the high number of episodes. I also gotta say that this story, even though they try to detach it as much as they could from being an actual queer story, still has moments to me that truly feel like the queer experience. Also, for having watched many music-themed BL shows, I can safely say that Lovesick is the best one with Together. So this show probably doesn't hold up for most people, but it absolutely does for me. So if Lovesick is considered low budget, weirdly written and awkwardly acted, I frankly don't know what to call Like Love. I think this show is pure trash, even though honestly it's one of those trash shows that I found really fun to watch. And the sex scenes will forever crack me up, not gonna lie. But especially the first season would not hold up today at all. Especially if we consider that China has literally banned BL from their country, so like, remaking this show today is literally impossible. Just like all of the Chinese BL shows that we're gonna see today. Then in 2015 we only have Falling in Love with a Rival. I'm really going down memory lane for this video. I remember in 2017 when I started watching BL and there were like 10 shows out max. I watched this one a couple of times and actually enjoyed it. Even though, not gonna lie, it's very much trash. It's less low budget than Like Love, but the acting is weird. The story makes no sense half of the time. The characters aren't even that likable. Like, this show truly makes me realize how much the bar was in hell. For years, BL shows had to do the actual bare minimum and still got quite a bit of hype. So anyways, that show doesn't hold up to the test of time and wouldn't have any success if remade today. Then we have Make It Right, one of the biggest early BL shows, very reminiscent of Lovesick in its setting and plot. I personally think it's way less good than Lovesick, even though the show still has some lovable elements. And I also gotta say that sadly the lack of consent in that show is very reminiscent of a very common trope in BL, especially early ones. And the production quality, acting, writing and the use of certain tropes definitely wouldn't be up to par for today's standards. So I think that this show would be way less popular if released today. And I'm also not sure it holds up that much. I wouldn't say watching it and enjoying it in 2022 would be impossible, but for me it definitely doesn't fully hold up, seeing how even in 2017 it already wasn't my favorite. Then we have, you already know it, the first BL I've ever watched, SOTUS. This show, being the biggest BL show ever until Together in 2020, has had a lot of expectations put on it afterwards, which is why so many people who watch it today are disappointed in it. I personally think that for the third Thai BL ever made and GMMTV's first BL series, this is by far the one that holds up the most to the test of time. Sure, it has some tropes that wouldn't be as accepted today, like the I don't like guys but I like him trope, or even the glorification of hazing, which is a problem, but I would say SOTUS is still a pretty solid rom-com. That yes wouldn't be as successful if it was released today, but still very much holds up in my opinion. So My Bromance is actually the only Thai BL from this period of time that I didn't watch directly in 2017 when I entered the fandom. Simply because this show is probably the most forgotten BL show ever made. Like, I'm not kidding, even in the span of a year, people had already completely forgotten about it. And when I actually watched the show in 2020, I was really surprised to find out that it's actually pretty solid. And in fact, way more enjoyable in my opinion than the movie it was adapted from. That being said, I gotta admit that it definitely is a forgettable show. Because while this was truly an enjoyable watch that was actually well executed for the standards of the time, I also completely forgot about this show the minute I stopped watching it. So sadly, if it was released today, it would definitely flop. Let me remind you that My Bromance had yet another series remake with the actual actors from the movie. Do I know anyone who watched it? Absolutely not. Like literally, I just remembered that right now. I had completely forgotten about this show. So yeah, I feel like this series and these stories doesn't quite hold up to the test of time. So now we're basically at my favorite Chinese BL, I guess. Yandai Byway number 10 was a weird show with a forced romance and very stunted chemistry, yet I really enjoyed it at the time. I really liked the setting of the pet shop, and I liked the gay heartache and pining. But yes, that show was problematic. Like, honestly, at this point, almost all the shows we've seen today are problematic in some way, and it's only in the past couple of years that we've started seeing shows that are generally not problematic at all. So for me, this show definitely doesn't hold up to the test of time, especially since it would get banned in China nowadays, and if it was to be released today, it would absolutely be lost in the sea of content. And finally, the one and only super popular Chinese BL, Addicted Heroine. This show is just as problematic as the one before, if not more. Once again, it definitely has some tone issues and chemistry issues, yet I did enjoy the setting and the story. Nowadays though, it definitely doesn't hold up. And if it was to be released in 2022, it absolutely wouldn't get the same success it did at the time. Now we're in 2017 with the 3 History 1 series. Those are pretty low quality and definitely don't have the amazing writing that Crossing the Line had, but I do think they hold up sorta okay. I don't think they would have the same success if they were released today though. Then we have Long Time No See, which is a really solid story with plot twist and a really compelling love story in my opinion. For its low budget, this is generally a good series that works really well for me and still 100% holds up today. And I do think it would gather the same success, if not way more today, with the explosion of Korean BL shows. Now, what's funny about Club Friday 8, True Love or Confusion is that I felt like the story was dated even when I watched it for the first time in 2017. Secret gay affair between confused queer men in the closet. Yeah, I had seen that 1,000 times in Western shows. Let's remember that my fandom right before BL was Robron from Emmerdale. That being said, I did enjoy the heartache and pining of this show. Also knowing now that Meng was played by Tony Raken, who played Simon in my all-time favorite Thai drama Project Skate or Souls, those bring it back full circle to me. So anyways, just saying that this show doesn't quite hold up in terms of production, story and acting, and that if it was remade today, it would get even less attention. Because the Club Friday series only gets subbed by fans, and they've been losing popularity in the Thai dramas fandom, because there are simply so many series coming out, especially ones with LGBTQ+ storylines. Then we have the first BL I watched live as it aired, 2 Moons. This is a series that has known a lot of drama, and honestly at this point I would consider it cursed. Honestly, it's the Glee of the BL fandom. I would say it definitely has been overshadowed by its remake 2 Moons 2, that had many more kiss and sex scenes than the original, which of course BL fans ate up. So anyways, not gonna lie, even though I spent all of 2017 rewatching this show over and over again, because at the time I actually had time to rewatch shows because there were again like 10 out. I gotta admit that I haven't rewatched this show since 2018 and have no desire to do so. I think one day I'll rewatch it for memory's sake, but I have to admit that this show doesn't quite hold up and would absolutely never gather the same success as it did in 2017 if it was released today. Then we have Together With Me, a show that I personally consider only pretty okay. This one I'm a little conflicted about because I definitely think that its more explicit aspect compared to other BL shows of the time really is what made its success in 2017 and would still work today. That being said, the girlfriend trope, especially the evil girlfriend trope, I feel wouldn't go down as smoothly with the BL fandom today. So even though I still feel like this show still holds up pretty okay, I do think that if it was released today, it wouldn't get the same overwhelming love that it used to get. We talked about SOTUS, so let's talk about its sequel, SOTUS S, that I feel doesn't hold up today at all, because it was already criticized at the time of its release. Unpopular opinion, but I don't think it's the worst sequel of all time, and it's actually one of the rare Thai sequels that does have some enjoyable moments. The problem with this show that absolutely everyone agrees about is absolutely the intimacy and chemistry between the actors that doesn't work for an established relationship. So this show doesn't quite hold up in 2022 because it already didn't hold up in 2017. And if it was released today, it would absolutely get even more obliterated, as we're now drowned in choices and get actual great chemistry from most actors. So now we have another sequel, Puppy Honey 2. I didn't include season 1 by the way, because I don't consider it a BL show, as Peak Rome were only the side ship, whereas season 2 was absolutely only made to capitalize off of Peak Rome's popularity, to the detriment of the main couple that got done so dirty in that. So anyways, you all know that I adore Afghan and that Afjunpul is my favorite human being on earth. But you probably also know that Peak Rome aren't my favorites. And so was Puppy Honey 2. It's an okay show, but that's kind of all there is. I actually enjoyed season 1 because the main ship was really cute and it was really short and efficient in terms of writing. But season 2 focused on Peak Rome, who feel weirdly written and acted most of the time. Also, those kisses look like they're being held at gunpoint, I'm sorry. So for me, this definitely doesn't hold up today. Especially when you see how incredible Afghan's chemistry is nowadays. I also think this show would absolutely flop if released today, and would absolutely not be the career launcher that it was for Afghan at the time. Then we have I Am Your King. Every time I look at the cast of that show, it kills me to see Kangla and Good from Love by Chance making out, but anyways. This was another show that really capitalized off of kiss scenes over actual substance. And it worked because people watched it, but even at the time this show was considered mediocre with a rushed ending. So it doesn't hold up and wouldn't get the same success if released today for sure. Truly our standards at the time were a little bit concerning. Then we have GMMTV's worst, though I keep forgetting that on Honcholati exists, Waterboy. Now, this show isn't the worst in the sense that I feel like it actually had a pretty strong world building and pretty fun characters, especially the side characters in that show carried the fucking show for sure. But yeah, it's pretty much garbage with barely any substance. I feel like this show doesn't hold up today because it barely did at the time. And if it was to be released this year, it would get even more criticized than it did at the time for its problematic elements. Though to take example from other successful BL shows, it's nothing a few makeout sessions can solve apparently. Then we're in 2018 with one of my all-time favorite shows, History 2 Crossing the Line. Fun fact, that show is my most rewatched ever with 10 rewatch sessions. It's simple but efficient, has compelling and quirky characters, really great writing, amazing acting. It actually did incredible in more emotional moments, and the ending scene literally makes me cry of happiness every time I watch it. So anyways, needless to say, I absolutely think this still holds up today. And while I don't think it would still get the same overwhelming success if it was released this year, I do believe it would still be pretty beloved. In this same history series, we have Right or Wrong, a generally forgotten story as it was pretty mediocre. I honestly almost have no memory from this one, except that the older boyfriend was really annoying and most of the story felt forced and convoluted. I feel like this doesn't hold up because everyone has forgotten about it, and if it was released in 2022, it would be even less popular than it did in 2018. So next we have Love by Chance, the first university BL that truly kicked off the trend. The first Line TV, rest in peace, show to get international links, and honestly overall an enormous success that kickstarted the careers of most of its actors. Also, why was Earth Pirate there? I'm still asking that question, but I'm not complaining. Love by Chance is for me a show that always had its issues, that might have gotten exacerbated by time, but mostly this show falls in the category of kinda problematic but still kinda good type of shows that honestly a lot of BL shows fall into. I would say that personally the overwhelming love I had for this show and AP has definitely faded over time, but I still hold it kinda close to my heart as well. So does it hold up? Yeah, I think a newer BL fan will enjoy this show if they don't think the university trope has been overdone. Would it still be as incredibly successful if it was released today? I have my doubts. Then we have what I actually considered one of my favorite BL shows for a little while, Ocean's Love. And wow, do I feel like this show has aged poorly. I do think its quirkiness and characters will forever be really lovable and entertaining. And I still hold some love for the show. With other really amazing BL shows like Cherry Magic and Life Love on the Line, this really feels too cartoonish and the intimacy feels way too robotic for today's standards. I wouldn't say this is a bad show by any means, but in 2018 I definitely considered it one of the best shows of the year, when today it doesn't quite hold up. And if it was released today, it definitely wouldn't have the same amount of success at all. Then we have one of my biggest guilty pleasure shows, Mighty. This show is the bad buddy of its time, if you will, in the way that the first half of the show was quite adorable, while the second half was incredibly messy. Nonetheless, I still adore Morty as a ship, and I still think this is Drake's best role, since GMMTV love giving him either annoying ones or secondary ones, often both at the same time. Justice for Drake, to be honest. So this show was kind of a flop at the time it came out, in the sense that it's one of the least viewed GMMTV BL shows to this day. And everyone I've seen talk about it agreed that it was trash, but the ship was amazing. So does it hold up today? Not really, because it was already a mediocre show at the time of its release. Though frankly I still rewatched it in 2021 and still loved it. And if it was released today exactly as it is, it definitely would be even less successful and would get hated on way more. Even though Mighty didn't get a lot of views, it was successful enough that Morty got an episode in this next series, or Sky. That show was the first one of its kind to combine different BL ships from different shows, well before Reminders, Close Friends or Why Destiny. And frankly, Our Sky is a pretty good show. Like yes, most episodes didn't add a lot to the original shows, but at least they were cute and didn't take away from them, which is already a win when you know how shitty Thai sequels tend to be. So for me this still holds up. Though if it was remade today it would probably be with mostly different ships, as we know GMMTV can't do anything without putting Brightwind at the forefront of it. And then we have another guilty pleasure for me, as I love the main ship, What the Duck. I think that today it would be insane to have a show that has 20 episodes in its first season, and it definitely wouldn't be as popular if it was released today. But despite this show being low-key, probably high-key trash, it's frankly a really fun and entertaining show, and I adore Pop Oates' dynamic. So does it still hold up? For me, yes. For most people, I don't think so. Then finally we have My Dream, which has become my own meme with Me, Myself and I, because it managed to get a bit of popularity as it aired, though clearly not enough to produce the sequel that they promised at the end of season 1, but today it's an absolutely forgotten show. Frankly, there was a period of time that I completely forgot this show existed, because this is the most mediocre show ever made. So no, it absolutely doesn't hold up, and if it was released today it would actually get less views than it originally did, because there's just so much more choice now. To conclude, fuck, I'm old. It was really fun for me to revisit these older shows, because some of them I still hold really close to me and remember fondly, and others honestly I was just reminded of them for this video. If you've been part of the fandom for a while, I would love to hear your own opinions. I know some of you have been there since Lovesick in 2014, and honestly, you are icons. So yeah, I'll be waiting to see your comments. I'll see you next time and have a great day.